morning, everyone, and welcome to this public inquiry. My name is Hazel Thompson Ahi, Senator Hazel Thompson Ahi, and I'm going to be chair for this meeting. Why? Normally, the chairman would be the minister, Dr. Nayan Gatsby-Dolly, and the vice chairman, Mrs. Lisa Morris-Julian. But because of the portfolios that they hold, it is quite likely that there may probably a conflict of interest. So they've asked and been granted permission to recuse themselves from chairing this meeting. Now, this is a virtual meeting, and there are certain specific guidelines which will apply. Make sure you mute your microphone when you're not speaking to help keep background noise to a minimum, please. Adjust your camera so that your face is clearly visible. I see everyone, so you've done that already. Ensure that notifications from your cell phone or any other electronic device in your vicinity are muted during the course of the meeting. We wish to welcome all of you here and also members of the listening and viewing audience. And those of you who are not with us virtually, but are in fact attending the meeting through other means, we are inviting you to post or send your comments via the Parliament's various social media platforms, Facebook page, ParlView, Parliament's YouTube channel, and Twitter. Of course, the normal courtesies will apply. So we begin by asking the representatives present, and whose names I will call, whose portfolios I will outline, to introduce themselves. So we start with the Ministry of Education.
Good morning.
And we have Ms. Naima Hussain. We are not hearing from the Ministry of Education.
Good morning, Chair. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are now.
Right. Good morning,
Just
Chair.
introduce yourself.
Colleagues. My name is Anna Singh. I'm the Director of Curriculum Division, to indicate to you that Ms. Naima Hussain will be represented by Mr. Sheldon Ajuda in her stead. School Supervisor 3.
Thank you. And you have with you?
I have with me Mrs. Kamini Bagalu, Assistant Director of Division of Educational Research and Evaluation. As well, Mrs. Natalie Robinson-Arnold, School Social Worker and Specialist. Ms. Simone Hayes-Noel, School Supervisor 3. Ms. Vashti Steele, School Supervisor 3. That's our team, madam.
Well, I'm sorry, we didn't have those names because we really asked that 3 persons from each entity be invited, but we'll see how that works. National Primary School Principals Association, please, will you introduce yourselves?
Good morning. My name is Carleen Hayes. I'm the newly elected president for the National Primary School Principals Association, NPSPA. And I have with me this morning our PRO, and she's also the president of the Port-of-Spain Principals Association, Dr. Charlene Quamino.
Thank you. National Council Parent Teachers Association.
Pleasant good morning to the chairperson, Mrs. Ahi, members of the Ministry of Education, members of government, all our stakeholders. My name is Clarence Mendoza. I'm the acting president of the National Council of Parent Teachers Association. And with me this morning is our compliance officer, Mrs. Frances Sampson. I thank you.
Catholic Education Board of Management.
Good morning. To all, my name is Sharon Mangru. With me is Ms. Oria Honore. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Catholic Education Board of Management. Ms. Honore is a Vicariate Manager for the Catholic Education Board of Management. Thank you.
Thank you. Anglican Education Board of Management.
Good morning to all. I am Cheryl Jackson, Secretary of the Anglican Education Board of Management, and with me is the Assistant Secretary, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you. Private Primary School Principal Association.
Good morning. I'm Mrs. Alicia Marquez, President of the Private Primary School Principals Association. I was supposed to be accompanied by Mrs. Janelle Peter this morning, but due to circumstances beyond our control, she's unable to attend, so I apologize.
Thank you for letting us know. Association of Administrators of Public Special Schools of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning. My name is Derek Mundy. I'm the president of the Association of Administrators of Public Special School. With me this morning, supposed to be Mr. Gerard Frederick, who is the treasurer.
Thank you. Sound very subdued, Mr. Mundy. A powerful presentation you threw at us there. Interesting reading. Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Phyllis Griffiths. I am the president of the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago. She is Mrs. Kahir Suklal Singh. She's an ordinary member, and she's also the principal of National Center for Persons with Disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Let everybody know. Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association.
Good morning, honorable ministers and MPs. Good morning, Madam Chair and other stakeholders. My name is Antonia Tika de Freitas. I am the president of Tutor, and this morning I have the Education and Research Officer of Tutor, Ms. Lisa Ibrahim Joseph.
Thank you. Well, as I said before, my name is Hazel Thompson Ahi, and I invite members of the committee to now introduce themselves to you.
Hello, good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to all persons present with us. Esmond Ford is the name, and I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to see you all. I am Nian Gasvidoli, substantive chairman of the committee, and I am happy to be a part of this inquiry because I am certain, for me especially, it will bear great fruits. I look forward to the recommendations and solutions coming out.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning. I am Jillian John. I'm a member of this committee. I really look forward to what will be said today because I think it will have far-reaching implications for the country. Thank you all so much for presenting yourself and making the various.
Next.
Good morning. My name is Kazim Hussein, member.
Good morning, Lisa Morris Julian, member, and I look forward to the recommendations myself.
Next.
Good morning, Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services. Happy to be a member of this committee. I look forward to the deliberations.
All accounted for? Thank you. The objectives of the inquiry that we're embarking upon this morning is to determine the root causes for the underachievement of schools in the Port-of-Spain and Environs District, and to examine methods to address the underachievement of schools in the Port-of-Spain and Environs District. Why Port-of-Spain and Environs, you may ask? So let's deal with that elephant in the room. What is the genesis of this inquiry? A few years ago, I was at Mass, not at my regular church, but the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Port-of-Spain, the 9 a.m. Mass, and the Vicar General was the celebrant. In his sermon, he made some startling comments that caused me to open my handbag, pull out my pen, and begin to make notes on my Catholic news. He said that most of the Catholic schools in the Port-of-Spain area were failing, and few schools were doing well. He called the names of the schools. That was very disturbing to me. I became concerned. Not only had I passed common entrance from one of the failing schools, I'd also taught in Port-of-Spain at one of the schools, but one that was excelling before I left teaching. About a year afterwards, coincidentally or by divine intervention, on a glorious Saturday, I was invited to a meeting at Hyatt to discuss the issue by persons who were involved in the study that produced the report on the schools. Since then, I've been following a discussion in the press and among members of that glorious Saturday committee, which is the day after Good Friday, glorious Saturday. I proposed the topic for discussion and eventually it was accepted, and here we are today. It is important that we discuss this topic as school is a protective factor, and closely aligned with the failing schools is the crime situation in Port-of-Spain and Environs. Now, only one of the many papers submitted mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I have countless times told the story of the boy who excitedly asked his teacher one morning, "You read the papers today, miss? About the daring robbery, miss?" "That is my brother, miss." The need for self-actualization by fair means or foul. When we look at the schools, the academic performance index, we see the schools that are excelling and the schools under academic watch. And where we have the highest number of schools under academic watch, 30 schools. 30 schools. And the schools that are excelling are Victoria, St. George East, Caroni, and so on. And we look at who mans these schools. There are many questions. And we hope that this morning, this inquiry will produce some answers. The future of our youth, the future of our country. If you remember that mass movement that came into Port-of-Spain that resulted in the shooting of a young mother, we realize that this situation is crucial and we need to find some answers to turn back that tide, that downhill slide that is happening today in this country. So we will begin with brief opening remarks from the various entities that are appearing before us this morning. And we have the head, Ms. Hussain. All right. So we will begin with the Ministry of Education. Mr. Sheldon Adura, are you taking or answering? Whoever is a designated person to take the lead for the Ministry of Education, will you please make your opening statement? I invite you now to do so.
Honorable Ministers and Senators, our host, Ms. Hazel Thompson-Aye, and other colleagues in education. We are thankful for the opportunity to provide clarity, information, and to gain feedback in terms of addressing the issue at hand. In terms of providing some context, we'd want to point out in relation to the topic before us, terminal examinations are used primarily for certifying and placement of students. In terms of examining the progress of, in terms of benchmarking and categorizing schools, we have used what we call national assessments, and the one you have mentioned, Madam, the Academic Performance Index. This assessment is a formative assessment and has been up to 2016 at the primary level, conducted at standards 1 and 3, and up to 2019 at the secondary level, conducted at Form 3. So these assessments that that informed your data with regard to the API are not terminal assessments, but really national assessments. In terms of the approach of the Ministry of Education to assure students' right to equal access to education, equity is certainly an important consideration. And based on our data and benchmarking practices, considering the variables that exist in different school contexts, we use the information to establish priorities in terms of resources and to also address needs. So those are some of the factors that we feel bear upon upon the issue at hand. Thank you.
Mrs. De Freitas? Tutor, please.
Thank you, Madam.
1 minute each person.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, tutor is of the view that in the first instance, we have to determine whether we are going to investigate underachievement of students, which is not the same as underachievement of schools. Like our colleague from the Ministry of Education, we believe that there are other factors that will impact on student performance, and therefore these must be considered in a holistic manner. We do not believe at this time, Madam Chair, that looking at underachievement in schools is something that in an isolated context would bring beneficial results. We believe that there has to be a more comprehensive approach to the investigation of underachievement, and that will hold not only for Port-of-Spain schools, but for schools across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. National Council of Parent Teachers Association. Mr. Mendoza, is it?
President, good morning to all. I will just elaborate on our concerns and some of the solutions in a nutshell. We ask that the right to education is legally guaranteed for all without any discrimination. The government of Trinidad and Tobago have an obligation to all our nation children under the Geneva Convention, the rights of the child, to create and develop upon an even landscape with a balanced education system that does not discriminate on the ability of our slow learners and those who are not academically inclined. The National Council of Parent Teachers Association, being a strong advocate for our nation's children, clearly see the 60-year-old Concord Act, which governs the denominational schools, have kept the right of the child at its highest level. We advise that the government of Trinidad and Tobago look closely at our government schools, which have lost their way, the value of spirituality, and an increase of indiscipline among our students over the year. Again, we advise that a public consultation with the government and all stakeholders be held in the shortest possible time to discuss the relevance of government schools being run by the denominational board, or discrimination of the rights is laid out in the Concord Act. We are asking that a clear playing field that all our students be part of. At this point in time, that's all my contribution. I thank you.
That was National Association, Primary School Principal Association. That was it. Catholic Education Board of Management.
Good morning once again.
Okay, but we'll come back.
Yeah, good morning once again. The Catholic Education Board of Management manages 29 schools in the Port-of-Spain area. And yes, some of these schools can be classified as underachieving, but I want to caution against defining a student, defining individual people simply by the marks that they make in an exam, because our students and our schools, by extension, are far more than the marks that are made in the exam. And as other speakers have mentioned before, there are several factors that influence student achievement in a school, and I think we need to look at all of those factors. Thank you.
Primary Schools Principal Association.
Thank you, Chairman, honorable colleagues. There are 72 public primary schools in Port-of-Spain, inclusive of special schools, and a questionnaire consisting of 8 questions was administered electronically to principals of Port-of-Spain. 45 responded. Respondents stated that underachievement can be a label placed to perpetuate inequalities that exist, or low achievement or low performance, which means that the student is getting low grades throughout, as well as the student getting lower than a group, hence showing a comparative aspect. Underachievement can also be seen as lower than expected. The only national comparative test is the SEA. If one is basing underachievement on the SEA results, one has to be certain that the SEA is a fair assessment. The responses found this assertion questionable, since the students are given scores based on a single day's performance in a 3-paper test focused predominantly on 2 subjects, mathematics and language arts, with an additional component of the latter, creative writing. This is a contradiction to the curriculum, which for the entire primary school career is based on the holistic development of each child to their potential. However, it seemed that all is dropped for a 100-meter dashed essay. What happens to catering for multiple intelligences we speak of, including technological skills, as is needed presently in this remote environment? Many of these principals stated that there would be no question of underachievement if the following were included with equal weighting: sports, drama, dance, music, character education and citizenship, visual and performing arts. Referring to all Port-of-Spain and Environs schools as homogeneous is in itself an inequity. The major results pertaining to the root causes of underachievement in Port-of-Spain and Environment schools are included in the acronym UNIQUE, UNIQUE, and we use the first letter for the acronym U, unique. We need to take schools that are uniquely Port-of-Spain in character and not be able to consider some of those schools whose populations will have migratory students. So based on this system of testing, we will say yes, those Port-of-Spain schools are underachieving because they are unique. They have a unique, because they have a perception of underachievement or underachievement culture, and they are labeled at risk and hotspot areas. This brings about a level of demotivation among students, teachers, and community. The N in unique, non-nurturing environment, most of the parents look shift. They have challenges adequately supervising their children. They are caught with the realities where they are immersed in a debt community, debt because of the high crime, the shootings and murders, and debt they carry high financial burdens. The I in unique inability to meet the needs, and our chair mentioned about Maslow, and in order for basic needs to be met, we have to look at the growth needs, education falling the latter. Q, the questionable attendance, and we look at absenteeism of mind and body. U, underpaid and undertrained. If one is addressing concerns with a specialized community, one needs to have a specialized staff and a range of social services specific to the needs of these students. And E, the economics. These schools have limited support and resources, human, physical, and financial. The system should be revisited in order to create fair and equitable opportunities. So we are excited by the work of the committee. We already began engaging with stakeholders, and we remain committed to working with you to ensure that every child reaches their fullest potential. Thank you.
Anglican Education Board of Management.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning again to all. This whole notion of underachievement in Port-of-Spain, in the schools of Port-of-Spain and Environs, we have to determine exactly what is underachievement in education. It suggests that schools in the Port-of-Spain and Environs area are not enabling students to reach their highest potential. In this context, all students will not have the same potential for academic achievement. However, holistically, there are other areas of learning and teaching, for example, visual and performing arts, creative arts, physical education, and the like. Therefore, the school is challenged to enable each student to reach the highest level for which they have that potential, and therefore nurture them accordingly. We know in the Port-of-Spain area that there are many other factors which can contribute to the underperforming of our students. Socioeconomic status, lack of parental supervision and interest, low level of motivation, and low level of interest and motivation of teachers. So we are quite happy to be a part of this panel so that we can really get some strategies to improve the performance of our schools. The Anglican Education Board of Management has 11 schools. Some may be considered underperforming, and if you can get all our 11 schools performing, that will be a great achievement for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Private Primary School Principal Association, please. Private primary school. Yes? We're not hearing private primary school principal. All right, there seems to be a technical difficulty. So can we have the president of the Association of Administrators of Public Schools, and we'll come back to the Private Primary School Principal Association? Sorry about that.
Good morning again. The Association of Administrators of Public Special Schools will underachievement in a different way. What we are looking at is that how do we measure underachievement? Our special schools, there are 4 public special schools in Port-of-Spain. and not all of them really focus on academics. Not all the students, I must say. Because of the fact that there are varying levels and various disabilities that you will find that require a certain type of structure, certain type of staffing that are required to ensure our students perform and perform well. When we may be focusing on academics for the SEA, etc., there are some of our students that will never be able to do as well academically, because we are talking about students with mental disabilities, physical disabilities. You have those who are deaf, sensory disabilities, etc. And what is happening, you have your core curriculum, which we basically focus on for SEA. One of the biggest shortfall you'll find is the expanded core curriculum, which is not catered for in the Ministry of Education. The structures that you had before, prior to Student Support Services Division, has been dismantled. Okay, you had a special ed unit before, and due to the fact that that special ed unit was dismantled, you no longer have even school supervision for special schools, because they were basically placed under the primary school, despite the fact that our students vary from preschool age to adulthood. Okay, so I'm wondering how on earth we can place students age 18, 19, 20, etc. on a primary school system. We have looked at the various challenges that we face. For instance, for the expanded core curriculum, you would require semi-professionals in various fields. The Student Support Services Division would have provided what you call a multidisciplinary team that focuses on diagnosing and determining the students' disabilities, etc., etc. And after doing your various assessments and evaluations, you would have found, okay, this person might be diagnosed with a particular disability. After you probably do your psycho-ed analysis. But what happens after that, the type of support and the type of teamwork that is needed to work with one student, and I like to emphasize that in special ed, we teach the child, not a class. The amount of people that will be needed to work with that particular child for him or her to perform, that is not in place. The type of evaluation and follow-up investigation in regards to this children, because we deal with each child as a case study. Okay? It's not there. So therefore, the structure that is in place will not work for our children with disabilities. I'll basically getting much deeper later on, but we have to start with at least the structure of our ministry, because this type of resources these students need, the kind of personnel.
Yes. I read your passion, I've heard your passion, and I want you to save some of it for the questioning. We only have 1 minute for this opening round, okay. And we want to get back to a couple of people that we missed. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
And we will hear from you later. Have no fear. Ms. Marquez, Private Primary School Principal Association. Okay. All right. All right. So, Mr. Griffith, Private Special Schools Association. Ms. Marquez, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning again to all stakeholders. So from the perspective of the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago, we are in alignment with what Mr. Mondi just spoke about in terms of special needs. We would also focus on teaching the child and not a class. So therefore, from our perspective, we are looking at the curriculum. We find that the curriculum is very rigid, and most times it just focuses basically on completing an exam. When our students come to us, we focus on getting them to be the best child that they can be. We also enjoy what we do in terms of collaboration. So we collaborate sometimes with the Private Schools Association in terms of getting information. We share information in that way. So from our perspective, we are looking at a collaborative effort, not only with special needs schools or private schools, but in general to get a better sense of what each child needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We want to try again with the Private Primary School Principals Association. She's not there? No? She's not present? All right. Well, if you're able to come back to us, come on board, later on we'll hear from you. We'll now commence our questioning, and we invite members to ask questions on the various submissions that we've received, starting with the Ministry of Education. Yeah. So we begin.
Madam Chairman, I have one for the Ministry of Education indicated that the School Supervision Division utilizes the basic procedures for school order and discipline and the School-Based Management Manual to monitor school performance. So my question is, based on page 1 and 2, question 2, part B, on the matter of basic procedures for school order and discipline and school-based management manual and the confirmation of the standard operating system, can the Ministry of Education advise when last this was communicated with the relevant practitioners at the school? Is there an orientation or a reintroduction of this manual? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Member.
So we will refer that question to Mr. Sheldon Ajuda, School Supervisor 3.
Thank you very much, Ms. Singh. Good morning to all members of the committee. My name is Mr. Sheldon Joda, representing the Director of School Supervision this morning. And the issue of school-based management, we have been on a rollout of school-based management since approximately 2012. We had started, the school-based management started in about 2007, but we had full rollout in 2012 to all schools. And the school-based management, we look at all areas of the govern an effective school. The school-based management model that we use was a combination of models used like New Brunswick, where New York Department of Education, Philippines Education Department, Australia, and Ofsted, as was mentioned in the document, where we took different aspects of what standards would make for an effective school. And we developed a school-based management with standards that we would like to achieve. Coming out of our rollout of the school-based management system, we realized that in 2018, that there were some basic measures, security measures that we needed in place in all schools to ensure that all schools are effective places of learning. We wanted to create environments that are conducive to learning. There might have been a little typographical error, I think, in the submission, but in terms of the basic procedures and basic measures, we look at entry protocols, where principals are to ensure that there are checks. Well, in COVID now, we'll have different protocols as well. But the basic in 2018 would have been entry protocols to check all students when they are coming in. We check for any contraband items just in case. We had protocols for assembly on how assembly should be conducted, that they should have a meaningful message to the students at the end of the assembly to send them off, and they should leave the assembly in an ordered manner to start the day orderly. We also had in this strategic patrols to ensure that heads and deans at schools, they work together with the principal and vice principal to patrol the schools during the day to ensure that all children are in class and to monitor the attendance of teachers to classes. We also have classroom supervision, where we have a supervision roster developed and designed. And we also want to monitor teachers and students' attendance to classes, where we look at teacher punctuality to class, even student attendance to class after bell rings for recess and lunchtime, or transition between classes. So these measures have been implemented by the ministry, and school supervisors have been trained on it. And since 2012 and up to now, we have continually having training, and on a monthly basis, when we have fraternity meetings with principals, we share this message with them to remember school-based management is the model the ministry is working with. And it is the last training, we had training in 2019 during the July-August holidays, where all areas of school-based management were delivered to all principals and vice principals, primary and secondary school. So school-based management is rolled out, and principals are reminded daily, well, not to say daily, but monthly at meetings, and in some cases daily, schools where we need to monitor of the need for the basic security measures to be implemented, as well as school-based management. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the reply, and I guess the manual is working.
Further questions, members?
Madam Chair, Esmond Ford.
Yes.
Madam Chair, actually, I wanted to start by with regards to the objective and with regards to what this inquiry entails. And I want to start by asking the CEO of the Catholic Board in terms of...
Excuse me, we stick with the Ministry of Education. So
you want to stick with the Ministry of Education?
Yes,
right,
please.
So probably the question can be directed to the Ministry of Education. The word underachievement. At the Ministry of Education, do we have a clear meaning of underachievement that is utilized across the board in the education system at all schools? Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Ministry of Education.
Okay, so on page 2 in our opening comments, we have indicated that we do not define schools as underachieving, and more so on the premise that such levels of achievement or underachievement can be assessed using terminal exams. Terminal exams look at academic performance, and I believe we have established that achievement of students and quality education goes beyond just that one criteria of academic performance. We actually would want to consider not just the social and personal development of the child, their talent development. And this information are not captured in terminal assessments. So in what we do is we look at our data and benchmark students on that basis, benchmark schools on that basis, as I've indicated, so that we are able to prioritize where resources go our targeted training, our staffing, our monitoring and support. Because at the end of the day, what we believe quality education speaks to and achievement speaks to is the holistic development of the child in terms of looking at where their needs are and assisting or intervening to make sure that those needs are addressed across the board.
Miss Singh, right? Miss Anna Singh, right? Yes, and Ms. Singh, in terms of your statement and not the finding on the achievement per se, you are satisfied that all the necessary school boards and all the reporting schools to you understand in terms of when they are reporting that they consider the factors of the social needs, the talent, the skills in ensuring that you are not determining a child as underachieving only by their academic achievement. In your reporting factor, do your principals identify all those information to you?
When we look at national data sets, those are targeting specific areas that we are monitoring in terms of the providing intervention. At the school level, we are convinced that our principals are aware of the multi-level dimension of a student and their interventions, and they have in a variety of ways reported the same. So the report in terms of class testing may not pick up beyond the breadth of subjects and academic achievement in the core curricular areas. But certainly there are many areas in which they recognize and award achievement levels. And you could only think of prize giving, you could think of all the activities in terms of sports and play and other curricular areas where students' achievements are noted and reported in the context of at the school level. And so we are satisfied that that understanding is there. We are not saying that we have achieved perfection, and we certainly would want to have broadened our reporting systems in terms of our standardized documents to ensure that students are better profiled. But at this point in time, the understandings are there, and we have evidence of effort towards measuring and, rewarding and recognizing the holistic child and their multiple areas of achievement.
And again, Officer, I hear you clearly. I understand in terms of the parameters that you are governed by. But for the average citizenry out there, I think they still have the concept that the students are clearly identified via the examination system, right? So if we look at SEA, which is the case that we are predominantly dealing with the primary schools, that most students are identified educationally along the SEA system, along what school they would have passed for when they would have sat their exams as we continue to go along. But I understand what you are saying, but I'm thinking that out there, in the public eye, the system is that, listen, SEA is what governs the whole thing and which determine whether, quote unquote, you would have achieved or whether you would have underachieved.
Now, I have, in my opening remarks, I've indicated that the SCA and the terminal exams are the SCA and the CSEC and CAPE examinations. And these are strictly, as we would say, academic in nature. And those are the ones that are reported on, but those are not the only aspects of school life that are reported.
I think we understand that. I just want to refer back to your report where you stated that the level of crime and violence that occurs in some of the communities in the Port-of-Spain and Environs Education District leads to experiences of trauma. You said that there was insufficient staff. There's insufficient staff to implement psychosocial, psychoeducational screening services for these students who live in communities with high levels of crime and violence. My questions to you are, what is the average waiting period before a primary school student is screened? If you can also tell us the number of primary school students awaiting screening services, and if these services were offered to students during the COVID-19 pandemic, and if so, what method was used? And if not, what were the reasons for this?
My colleague, Mrs. Natalie Robinson-Arnold, school social worker, will take this question.
A pleasant good morning. Students are screened based on referral. Once a referral is received, we go through a multidisciplinary team process and determine the type of screening that is required based on the initial problem that is there. The MDT team is comprised of guidance officers, school social workers, our psychologists, special education, and they will determine the type of screening. It could be one or multiple of those providers. Once we receive it and it goes to the MDT, it could take approximately 2 weeks based on the quantum of referrals and the time it takes to get to us. But once the MDT goes through the referral, intervention happens at least within a day or two.
Number of students awaiting screening services.
Are you referring to psychoeducation, ma'am?
Psychosocial, psychoeducational screening services.
I don't have that data on me.
All right, fair enough.
Provided.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me, during COVID-19 pandemic, and in fact, up to now, it's still going on, what methods were used?
Our referral form went virtual so that our parents, teachers can refer to student support services. Additionally, we have a hotline service where you can call in and request the services that will be needed.
So there was no direct contact with anybody during this period?
Yes, contact happened virtually, as well as face-to-face, especially in our remote area, deep northeastern, like Matslot and Tobago, where there are no connectivity for our students. It also occurred in southeastern and the St. Patrick districts mainly.
Right. Sorry. We're focusing on Port-of-Spain. What happened in the Port-of-Spain and Environs area?
I do apologize. Virtual.
So what are the interventions after their screen? What are these services that you offer?
We offer counseling services, family intervention, psychoeducational assessments, home visits are conducted, home visits assessments, social functioning assessments. We advocate, so there's advocacy, parenting and education, programs and workshops. As well as networking and external referrals to other agencies for further specialized intervention.
Since everything was virtual in Port-of-Spain, there were no home visits.
No, home visits were conducted at a face-to-face for students that needed home visits for additional information and assessment.
There were home visits, you're saying?
Yes.
I see. You have any idea about the ratio of, and I know you don't have specific figures here with you, of intervention services to students in need of services? If I can give us a rough idea.
Repeat that question, please.
The ratio of intervention services to students in need of services. What proportion of students who were in need received this?
I don't have any data at present in terms of student support, so I don't want to make.
To give a guesstimate. I see. What would you say are the differences between the private primary schools and the government and the church board primary schools within this district that have been performing under the national average in SE?
Sorry?
Yes.
Yes. For clarification, you are asking us to compare student academic performance in terms of whether they are derived from a private school or from a board school?
No, we have that data. We know that. But what account for the differences? What would you say? I mean, you've had the reports over some years, and you would have asked the relevant questions. What would you say account for the differences between the performance in the private primary schools and the government and church board primary schools within Port-of-Spain? Those that have been performing under the national average. If you can give us some answers, we'd be grateful.
In terms of those that are performing under the national average, private schools are run on the basis of funds that are raised, either in terms of fees, so to speak, whereas government schools are publicly funded. So the issue of resources would certainly be one that would be of significant concern. It's private and government, yes. So government schools, staff, salaries, all resources, main resources, even at some point in time, textbooks and so on, all funded by the government. Whereas in terms of private schools, they are reliant on whatever income they are able to generate. And that would be one of the first issue. The second issue I think we would have to distinguish would be the intake. What informs intake for private schools as compared with government schools? And we know that in the case of government schools, there are no restrictions that limits. For private schools, their restrictions may limit in terms of those who choose to access their services for whatever reason as an alternative to government schools. I think fundamentally we would have to also look at the assessment levels and capabilities of the teachers. If you are to be in a government schools or government assisted, teachers have to have certain qualifications and they have to be assessed at certain levels. Private schools may have other arrangements and that would be a factor as well. Should I continue?
I'm puzzled because my impression is that the teachers in primary schools, in private schools, aren't generally as well paid as the government teachers, for one, and may not be as qualified as the government and other schools, but yet the results are of a higher caliber. So I didn't understand what you meant by the salary and so on, because, I mean, friends and people I know teaching in the private schools, you know, the pay is not on par. Very few, some of them, of course, but generally, wouldn't you say that government pays better?
I'm agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing, but we spoke to the private schools that are under the national mean, because we know there are private schools that are performing well beyond the national mean. So I was responding to that point you asked. Should I continue or are you satisfied?
Continue.
Okay. We're looking also at parental engagement. We believe that parental support is a very important dynamic. And in terms of the private and the government schools, there may be disparity in terms of means. The means for the parent to either come to the school or the means for the private school to engage with parents. COVID has highlighted that, because whereas resources for services and access in terms of internet and devices were provided and have continued to be provided to government schools, private schools may have been hard-pressed to source funds for same in terms of engaging with the students and their stakeholders. And another thing is, as we've indicated, the selection of teachers for private schools. As you've pointed out, there's a disparity with the salaries. And in terms of those teachers who do join the private schools, it is possible that having not been able to gain access to a government position may have resorted to a private schools opportunity, and as you pointed out, possibly also because they are less qualified. All of this is not to say that private schools are not positioned to do a good job. It's just to say that there are constraints that they may have as opposed to government schools. And on the other hand, government schools may have better resources and access, but there are constraints beyond those that also we grapple with.
Just want to ask one more. It's a pity we couldn't have you for the entire day. So many questions for you. But you mentioned that the school supervisors go into the school once a month. Does that really happen?
What
school supervisors? How often do they go to the schools?
I'm going to refer that question to the school supervisor with us.
Good morning again. In terms of what I mentioned earlier, is that once a month we have fraternity meetings with all the principals. Possibly we have sometimes meetings with deans and heads of department and vice principals.
But in terms of visits to school, sorry to interrupt. When you talk to visit to school, when do you actually go into the school? How often?
Right. So I was referring to earlier that I mentioned when you said once, but sometimes depending on the nature of situations at schools, school supervisors visit sometimes once, twice a week. We have cases of schools where, based on the situation, they are in schools frequently where we have issues to deal with. And at schools where they are supposed to visit at least one school per month based on the number of supervisors we have. School supervisors have a range of, like in primary school, we'll say they have 1 to 15 schools. And in secondary schools, we have a case of like 1 to 12, 1 to 14 in some districts. So within the month, they should visit a school at least once. And in the cases of some schools where we have situations that need to be addressed, we visit more regularly.
What's the longest you think a school would have been without seeing a supervisor?
Well, in the case of some of the high-performing schools, right? Well, let me say high-performing. Some of the schools that are better managed by their principals, they might see a supervisor probably once every 2 months. In the case of some schools, but the school supervisor will be in touch with their principals on a regular basis, be it by phone, be it virtually. They will always make contact with their principals. Sometimes on a daily basis, school supervisors liaise with their principals.
Thank you. Somebody wanted to comment? Tutor? Ms. De Freitas?
Yes, Madam Chair, with your permission, I wanted to make a comment on what Mr. Hossain asked about initially, and then to treat with the issues placed on the table by yourself and Mr. Ford. Can I proceed? Okay, thank you. So in terms of the issue of discipline and the manual that the DSS representative spoke to, that Mr. Joda spoke to, yes, strategic patrols with deans and supervision of students at the secondary level, that's important. However, it must be noted, we do not have deans at the primary school. So the issue of supervision is something that is spread across the board with the teachers there. Additionally, for quite some time in the secondary schools, we have not had vacancies of heads and deans filled.
Excuse me, we deal with secondary schools on the next occasion. So let us confine everything to primary.
Right, so the point is we do not have those positions in primary schools, and therefore that issue of maintenance of order and so falls to the schools allocating committees and with particular responsibilities. Madam Chair, MP Ford, Minister Ford made the point about the public perception of students being identified by results. And he asked whether the schools understand that when they are reporting to the Ministry of Education, they have to report not only on academics, but on all facets. And whilst Ms. Singh sought to add to that, tutor would want to say that is one of the fundamental flaws we see with our system today. There is a society perspective that we are defined only by examinations, only by grades and results. And therefore, that public perception is one aspect of what would guide how we develop our reporting matrices. And until we change that, Madam Chair, then we must, and we start to look at children's other talents and competencies, then we will not get out of this box. Additionally, the question was asked about how often do supervisors go to schools? What about the waiting period for students to receive interventions after referrals? And tutor will have to commend its members here in terms of personnel at SSSD and the supervisors, because the reality is they are short-staffed. Both agencies are short-staffed and overworked. When you look at situations in Port-of-Spain, speaking specifically now, 2 SS3s and 3 or 4 lowest ranking supervisors would not be adequate. So when you look at tutors' recommendations, Madam Chair, colleagues, you will see we have made recommendations for increasing the cohort of supervisors in Port-of-Spain and Environs specifically, and for dealing with the perception of being exams-oriented and therefore trying to change that and working our curriculum accordingly. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank Ms. De Freitas for that input. Thank you.
Ms. Mangru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question you were asking about the difference between the government schools, the board schools, and the private schools and the performance, when we talk underachievement, we have to face it. We are looking at underachievement in terms of exam results and so on. While I started off by saying we don't define our children by the exam results, but there is a basic standard to which all the children must achieve. We want them at least to be literate, and by literate I don't mean just being able to read and write. Now, when we look at what is holding the children back in this area, what are the challenges they're facing, we find that in the Catholic schools in the Port-of-Spain area that are considered underachieving, there are two big factors. One, most of these schools, if not all, are in areas designated hotspots. And two, the level of poverty. So to go back to your opening statement about Maslow, we are looking at safety needs that are not being met. And I think until we meet the safety needs of those children, it is very difficult to go beyond. Not that they don't go beyond. Those are beautiful children, and I am so sorry that all of the public perception is about a set of underachieving people. Our schools in the Port-of-Spain areas achieve. Teachers go to school every day. Teachers provide a measure of safety to those children. There are children who prefer to be in school than home. That is a great achievement, right? So, I think this whole issue takes a lot more than this one session that we are having. And I would like to see it being the start of a much greater conversation on what it is we expect of our schools. Sorry not to go on too long, but the fact that we have teachers who go to school every day in some of our schools is such a great achievement, because they are afraid for their safety every day, and yet they go. And Madam, I see teachers holding children, hugging children, assuring children that they are there for them. And all of these things need to be looked at. I do want to make a plug for the Ministry of Education's national test, which was discontinued since 2016, because it did provide a broader picture of the child. Not the best as yet, but better than the SCA standardized test. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention. Now, any person, any group there, continuing education is extremely important. I've always held that view. I've always said that. Now, in terms of assistance to you, those of you who are interested, because not everybody is interested, would you like to see a system where the Ministry of Education can provide for you to access training that would assist you to be a better teacher and pay for it? And not only that, but if it is happening, and sometimes these courses are happening outside of the vacation period, but allow you to attend these courses without losing part of your leave. Do you think that would be of great benefit to you? Any takers?
Good morning, Chair and fellow colleagues in education. Currently, the Ministry of Education is providing...
We're not hearing you. Could you raise your voice, please?
Right. The Ministry of Education is currently consistently providing training. It is up to the teachers to access the training. But prior to this period of time of SEA, they used to have training during the vacation time where teachers would sign up, and the course was covered by the Ministry of Education. We can look to return to that, especially for things like promotion, preparation for promotions, special ed training also for those teachers who are so inclined to join special ed units. But yes, the current especially with the online training, it is very successful right now for teachers.
Thank you. Now, I do not think you will disagree with me that what we have generally is a punitive culture. A number of countries in the Caribbean have moved towards instituting restorative practices. A number of the student support services staff accessed the training some years ago, but when the head of the institution, that department changed, that stopped. Is there any move towards instituting restorative practices? Jamaica has mandated that the Ministry of Education work with the Ministry of Justice on this. It's happening in the countries of the Caribbean, because the way we treat our children at home and at school accounts to a large extent as to how these children become, and how they treat other people. So do you see any possibility of any change in this culture that we have here? We have a no-zero tolerance for children being rude to teachers. We do not have a no-zero tolerance for students being mistreated by teachers. What's your view on that?
We do use restorative practices, restorative circles. They occur at some schools where we have officers that were trained. Just recently, we had some teachers that were trained in looking at the approaches to assist in classroom management. So they are used. There is need to intensify the use of restorative justice, yes, and more training.
Two other persons, thank you for that. Other persons who wish to speak? Mr. Mundy?
Yes, regarding to this type of training, now, what we would have had, training for special educators in the various disciplines, right? Whereby teachers would have gone to Jamaica, some would have gone to the UK and also the US to do specific training, whether it's for behavioral, emotional challenges, children with visual impairment, for the deaf, behavioral, emotional. This type of training has stopped. You no longer have the specialist training that is required to rehabilitate or to assist children with special needs. Okay, you have to either get online, spend your own money, okay, and get that training on your own once it is available. This needs to resume because of the fact that you are now having quite a number of teachers in our special schools, right, do not have the skill set to really work with the children that they have been charged with to assist or to how to call it, implement the individualized education program. For instance, again, you have a lack of staff, the support staff that you need. For instance, your occupational therapists, your physiotherapists, orientation and mobility specialists, your adaptive physical education specialists. Quite a number of professionals and semi-professionals are lacking because of the fact that you don't have the type of training required, and our teachers address their trying to play, how we call it, a master of all, which is impossible, in developing individualized education programs and having it implemented. So there's quite a number of training courses out there that our teachers need to engage in. And of course, many of them may not be able to afford it, okay, because some of us have families to see about and so on. And we will welcome that type of training, because I knew that manager you were talking about, I think about $500 million was allocated for training, and all that you got was quite a lot of workshops. That is just to orient you. However, the in-depth training that was required, that was not done. And it still hasn't been done. Thank you.
There have been several complaints about parents not taking an interest and not coming to meetings and so on. Now, you will agree with me, I'm sure, that parental engagement in the life of the child, in the school life of the child, is very important. Yet, over the years, and correct me if I'm wrong, parent-teachers meetings have been put during the school time. When I used to teach, I know we stayed back at school for parent-teachers meetings. Now it's said that the parents must take time off from work, which is extremely difficult for some parents. Is there a movement to move back the PTA and let the teachers make that sacrifice once a month to stay back to attend these parent-teachers meetings in the best interest of the children? Association. Mendoza wish to speak as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I will defer the question to my counterpart, Ms. Francis Sampson, our compliance officer at this time. I will hold my question for later on. Thank you. Ms. Sampson.
Through the chair, it is a twofold situation. You have some parents you cannot get to come to the school after hours because there is no one to look after the children in the afternoon. And then there are some instances where you cannot get parents at all, making it almost impossible to take place. While I would agree with the chair that it is important to have the PTA meetings at the school, I think schools now have to juggle between a convenient time to have the meeting. Most of our meetings are held in the afternoon after school. If it is that a teacher, however, wishes to meet with a parent in some instances, or meet with a class of parents, that can be done or is done during the school time. All right, I hope I've answered the question. Thank you.
Ms. De Freitas wishes to say something on that?
Madam Chair, just to add to what Ms. Sampson said, our information is that many teachers who work in Port-of-Spain do not necessarily live in Port-of-Spain. So you have the issue as well of those teachers having to balance their responsibilities with what transpires at school. We have many instances of parents-teacher meetings having taken place after school hours, yes. But I think the bigger picture, as what Ms. Sampson alluded to, is that you have the class meeting, you have the individual meeting. That's a smaller group for a more specific purpose, and therefore those tend to take place during the working hours, and there's always follow-up afterwards. So.
Any further comments or members, any questions for any of the other entities?
Madam Chair, can I make one comment? One of the byproducts of this COVID arrangement is that some schools have reported increased frequency of meeting with parents because they can do this online, they can do it by telephone, so the parent is not required to come to the school. So as we move into what used to be normal, this is something to bear in mind, but always that we are the servants of the parents, and therefore that we need to find a way to meet with the parent rather than sit back and say the parents are not coming, the parents are not interested. Very few parents are not really interested in their children's school. We know they are, but they find difficulty in meeting the school requirements. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to follow up with Ms. Sampson's teacher president and Mrs. Mangu, in that many times the context of the school is important, and the parents within that school, as Ms. Sampson alluded to. When we, for example, I'm a principal in a school in Port-of-Spain, in East Port-of-Spain, and when we started meetings, we had meetings at 5 o'clock, we had meetings at 1 o'clock, at 10 o'clock to see what the feel was. And most of our parents came out at 1 o'clock. That was the highest percentage. And therefore, that's the time we had meetings. We also recognize that having, as I mentioned, as we mentioned, as NPSPA mentioned in our presentation, having bread and butter issues, Maslow hierarchy of needs. We always have something to eat. You must have some refreshment. Parents are coming in, and that was a major pull. Not only coming for the food, but because we always had guest speakers, persons relevant to their issues, practical and hands-on, to get them interested, and it increased over the years at the school. So there are a lot of factors to look into parents' engagement, looking at where they are, not just coming to a meeting for coming to a meeting's sake, but does it really address their needs and their concerns and have the environment set up for success, for them wanting to be there, for them wanting to engage and being ready. So that's very important in terms of that aspect of parent involvement.
Thank you very much. Member Cox, you wanted to say something to add? Is she hearing me? Unmute, please.
Yes. Actually, I took down my hand because my hand was up from way back when we were speaking about something. I understand.
Literally?
No, it was up here, virtually. But actually, I want to just go back because I recognize that there was some talk about the schools. Let me see, I made a note about, we talk about underperformance and we talk about the parents, we talk about the students, we talk about some social issues, which I know it's very important. But I also wanted to say that there was no talk about teachers in the way that what I recognize too, there have been some problems with regards to teachers in schools, and we need to identify that. Because, for example, I've had persons who, still, before this virtual, but they were all complaining sometimes that the teachers were not in the classroom in some of the primary schools in the area. Actually, I went to a primary school in East Port-of-Spain. I went to Eastern Girls Government School. All right? And I did very well there because also part of it was because of the teachers that I had. And I think I do appreciate that teachers play a key role also in schools. All right? I went to a Catholic high school after that. And I must say, at the time, I was very immature. I didn't even understand the importance of learning and education, right? But the teachers were the key ones who I would give all the kudos for ensuring that I did my work. So I'll go back. When we're talking about high school, secondary, I'll speak about some other things. But I'll go back to primary. And I would say that the teachers, too, have a key role to play, and I want us to understand how key that role is, because when you're in an environment, particularly you're teaching, there must be a caring aspect, all right? Because I've had to speak with principals in certain schools where I've seen principals meet with them as a former member of parliament, schools in East Port-of-Spain, and I felt from talking to the principals, I felt where they didn't really care, about situations. And we talk about, sometimes we talk about the government, the ministry, parents, students, but I think we also have to take into consideration the role that teachers play and their accountability with regards to underachievement. That also has to be brought into perspective. And that was my comment.
Thank you very much. And I would like to endorse that, the role that teachers play. I was speaking to the teacher last night, and she said what some of those children are going through in their homes. You know, the situation is so terrible that she wishes she could take all the children home with her. You know, she wants to hug them, she wants to take them home. But teachers can't do that. I've taken a few children home on weekends. They're all grown up, parents are there now. But there needs to be support, a lot of support, for what children are going through in their homes. So we can't be complaining about the parents if we do not provide the support for the parents. And if sometimes we don't take the hard decisions to remove children when there's no hope of any kind of good situation in the homes that they're living in, unfortunately. And that's where the Children's Authority comes in many times. Any other member would like to ask any? Yes, Mr. Ford?
Madam Chair, is it possible? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would like to ask again the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education highlighted that principals of Laventille Mova schools were trained in developing successful schools culture and a climate based on the discipline manual developed by the Ministry of Education. And that's on the submission, page 15, number 6, Roman numeral 2, bullet point 1. And the question I would like to ask, were these principals of underperforming primary schools within other areas of the Port-of-Spain and Environs District who received the same training? Right, I want to know if all of them received the same training. Secondly, when did the training take place? And thirdly, was there a change in school culture, stroke climate of the primary schools which received this said training? Please shed some light, please. And then I have one other question after that, and that will be my last question for the day.
Ministry of Education, I think those questions were meant for you.
Yes, sorry for the little delay. In terms of the Laventille Mova School Improvement Project, that is a program that falls under the purview of the CEO. So we are familiar as school supervisors and school supervision management that there was training for principals to create that culture in those schools of improvement. But the school supervisors in Port-of-Spain as well, in late 2019, they also conducted similar training with their principals in secondary schools, and they also did those with primary schools that don't fall within that Mova Laventille area. So training was conducted with principals on that. And as we said earlier, all aspects of the training will also fall under the school-based management model, as we mentioned earlier, on improvement in all schools. Thank you.
I'd like to come in there too. Your question.
Go ahead. I'll give way.
Thank you. I just want to come in there because as you talk about training, this is something that I observe. I think that persons who are teaching or maybe principals, it is something that we all can look at. But there must be specialized training for persons who are going into particular areas to be a principal or a teacher in certain schools. Why? Because it is clear that there's a lot of stereotyping that takes place. All right? Even in the wider society, from the time they hear you're from Laventille, or they hear, well, I'm going into that school and there's a hotspot area as far as you know, there's a different attitude, there's a different posture when it comes to persons in the schools. I mean, I have spoken to some teachers who would tell you that, because a lot of my friends are teachers, all right? Well, you know, I am going to that school and they're already going with a preconceived notion that, you know, they're going to meet bad parents, bad students, they expect to get attitude and so on. So I don't know if there may be a need for some kind of cultural training and an understanding, because it's not everyone is going to be a particular way, but you know that, remember, you hear things, because I want to say that in the background of when I was member of parliament for Laventille East Mover, I had colleagues who would ask me, so how you just make out up there? So in other words, in their mind, their posture is, it is the wild, wild west. That, well, how you be seeing people, and I'm telling you, colleagues, members of parliament, who were so shocked that you were there any night seeing people. And so therefore, if my colleagues, who we will think would know better, do not have that understanding that it's not all over, and it's not everybody would be bad, or then what happens now when the average person, like for example, teachers who may be placed in certain schools, they may need to have some type of training and understanding that is, because you can't help it, but stereotyping takes place. And also an understanding of the culture of what to expect and so on. And that's all I have to say again. So over to you.
Madam Chair, Ministry of Education making any comment there, or should I come back in?
I think had an urgent comment to make from Anglican School Board.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think in terms of teacher training, I think one thing the denominational boards have, the privilege they have, is to do their own training part from the Ministry of Education. In the Education Board, our schools are divided. And so therefore we have subcommittees of the central board in different regions we have throughout the country, Trinidad and Tobago. So we do our personal, we do training for teachers. For example, we do subject training like creative writing, reading, comprehension and courses of this sort. We also do training for promotion. Those who are our prospective teachers who are seeking promotion, we also do training for that. As well as being a church body, we have Mothers Union. They also do training with our parents, parenting skills, because we have to face it. Some parents have some difficulty in training or supporting their children, and we also do that. So we take advantage of the ministry's training, as well as we do our own training for our parents as well as our teachers.
But of the 11 schools you have, 6 of them are underperforming according to the index. What do you think needs to be done to bring them up to speed, do you think?
Well, Madam Chair, actually, it depends on the group of children for that. But as you see, we base our performance on the SEA results. So it depends on the group of children that are writing the exam or for that particular. For example, Ascension Anglican, they have been on the rise because previously they didn't get schools, as we would call them, so-called prestige schools, and they have now started. So the principal has a lot to do with it, because if you know what you want from your schools, you would encourage your teachers to do likewise, and the performance, we have seen some improvement in the performance of that school. Escalier is another school because of the leadership. We are getting some improvement in those schools. So we are working with them, and we have regional bodies, regional education bodies. We try to assist our principals, especially those who are in acting positions. We try to assist them in school improvement.
You will agree with me that the principal sets the tone for the school.
Definitely. Definitely,
the change of principal can produce an amazing result. Is it very difficult, therefore, to bring about this change at times? When you see something is just not working, the school has gone, I'm thinking about a specific school. It was top school some years ago, went right down. They've changed the principal and it's coming right up again. How difficult is it when it's not working to remove the principal?
Well, we can go to Service Commission. We can make recommendations. We can also make recommendations to Service Commission. So that is why the denominational school, when we have to, even though, yes, people may be successful at the Service Commission's interview, we have the last say. We have the last say of who we recommend. That is constant visits to the school and monitoring the performance of the school. That is definitely important.
Thank you. Mr. Mendoza.
Yes, Madam Chair. Oh, okay.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to touch on most of the items that were laid out here today. And I will start with the most recent one from Ms. Cheryl Jackson from the Anglican Board. Clearly stated that the Ascension Anglican School is on the rise, and I want to commend that. The NPTA has visited that school, and we have seen the change, which was put in place by the principal. The questions were spoke about earlier on parental involvement and the time that our schools are having meetings with our parents. At Ascension Anglican School, what the principal would have put in place with the PTA there is clearly a model that we are working with throughout Trinidad and Tobago at this time. In our hotspot areas, in our areas, Port-of-Spain and Environs, where we are talking underachievement, you must understand that parents of those children would have come up under the realm of underachieving also. In saying that, parents choose not to come to PTA meetings at times to be voted into a position or to even assist the school in a position. So what we have done at Ascension Anglican School is to have a parent per class have a private meeting with that class and the parents of that class. They will now bring the necessary information to one PTA meeting or one body and share it with the president or the secretary of that body. So the parent entail who is shy and who probably has been an underachiever in the past is now speaking out, can be part of by way of the principal involvement and showing them the way. So principals in our schools are looked at as the model in bringing parents involved, working with them along with school supervision and the SSTs that come through the school. So we are saying it's great to know that Ascension is named today. They are one of the schools that is on top of the agenda in working with the parent one-on-one in bringing the parent to the school and having the parent work with their child at home. This is the key here, is the parent learning while teaching. And we have lost that way a long time now. I just also want to say to Minister Cox again, thank you. National Family Services has been top on the agenda, and I want to say it again because we at the NPTA use the National Family Services to our advantage in training our parents, parental workshop, and so forth all over the years. For the last 15 years, since I've been involved, National Family Services give us the stats. Where school services, social services workers are 1 in every 15 or 20 schools, we advise our parents to visit National Family Services.
I think we got the message. Thank you very much. I want to ask something new. Are there any plans to remove the schools that are in particularly dangerous areas where you have the bullets flying? Bethlehem School, and particularly Southeast Secondary that was moved temporarily and brought back. You know, if we are to be honest, we would not want certain children you would not go to school there. Why children must be going in that area in Southeast School that is so dangerous to them? If we say we care about children, why did we put them in John D and then take them back? Is it right? Is it fair to them? What plans are there for removing those schools from there?
I think the Ministry of Education is better suited to answer that question. However, through the NPTA, we are advocating that our children be safe based on the rights of the child. We are advocating for it. Okay, but Madam Chair, before I close, I wanted to elaborate on Minister Ford's questions on FBA through the Ministry of Education and our SS3 that is with us today, Mr. Sheldon Adjun. Now, we have heard of the SBA and I've probably visited 90% of the schools in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm saying today, the SBA, the school-based management model that is out there, I'm asking Mr. Judah to let us know today, does all schools in Trinidad and Tobago follow the model? And if so, is stakeholders' involvement a key in our school-based management? Because we have an issue with that. We have a serious issue with our stakeholders' involvement in our schools in Trinidad and Tobago with school-based management. Thank you.
Mr. Mendoza, I know we have a lot of questions, and really it is the short time, but we're going to be losing some members because they do have Parliament this afternoon. So we really, it's such a pity that we don't have more time. And
Madam Chair, can I just make one comment, please? Jillian John. Right. I mean, based on, it seems as if you're about to wrap up. And I think based on what I've seen today, our leaders in education, those who have presented themselves, the support agencies, as it were, what would have come out of this is that they are well aware of the issues. I find them to be capable and well trained. So I think I'm comforted in that regard, because at least we have something going on that is right. I'm getting feedback somewhere. That's a major part of the battle. I want to commend MP Minister Cox, that is, for her transparency in talking about the stereotyping, because first to get to the root of what is ailing us, we really have to be truthful about the problem. But I don't feel discouraged because I think all of the stakeholders, including those on the committee, are committed. But what we have to look at now is that fierce urgency, as Martin Luther King put it, the fierce urgency of now. What are we going to do? Because what we know for sure is that everyone knows, and the stakeholders who have presented themselves today are well aware, and they're very, very capable. I think those are my comments for this morning.
Madam Chair.
That brings us to the closing statements, the closing remarks from
Madam Chair, before you do go, I wanted to make two requests that the Ministry of Education could provide for us in writing, please? Or is it that the committee will write them?
Sorry?
I wanted to make two requests to the Ministry of Education that they can submit in writing to our committee.
All right. What you can do is submit it to the committee, and we'll submit to the chair, and we'll submit it to them.
Okay.
All right, on your behalf. So let's go through with the various entities and have closing remarks from each, and perhaps, something that you're really burning and you want to say that we could get it in a very, very short time. So we start with the Ministry of Education. Closing remarks.
On behalf of the team here, we really are quite pleased with the fact that the issue before us is well understood in terms of how we go about really evaluating our students, how we go about meeting their needs, and more so how we look towards mitigating for inequity. We are appreciative of the report of the committee that would highlight our constraints so that we are able to access the staffing, the resources, the training that would certainly go a long way to improve our service delivery. And we look forward to receiving any further information that would allow us to present our position and and provide clarifications in going forward. We at the ministry thank the committee and want to reiterate that we are as committed as you are to making sure that the society is transformed one student at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. National Primary School Principals Association, please. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I just want to say, based on all that we have heard today, I just want you to understand that we understand the need in the schools in Port-of-Spain and Environs. And we just need to advocate that we want an investment in education for all organizations to buy into the schools in Port-of-Spain, buy into investing in our education and making our children become very successful. They are the future citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the workforce of the future as well. So we just hope that we can continue to engage our stakeholders and work towards dealing with these issues. I thank you.
National Council Parent Teachers Association. Then we'll have Catholic Board following, immediately following them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I defer all closing remarks to my colleague, Mrs. Francis Sampson, at this time.
Through the chair, if I may, the National Council of Parent Teacher Association is very committed and willing and dedicated towards improving the lives of children and parents in Trinidad and Tobago. And we look forward to participating in another such forum as this. And we thank you for inviting us at this time.
All right.
Madam Chair, the Public Education Board of Management just wishes to stress that improving the achievement of children generally in our schools and by extension the overall school requires that all the stakeholders work together, because it is not just the education system. We need to improve the lot of each child. We need to work on the home. We need to work on the community. But one particular request that I have is that we consider some early childhood centers so that we are able to deal with the children, especially in our East Port-of-Spain area, so that they get that early start to being in an environment which makes them ready to learn. We continue, the Catholic Education Board of Management, continue to be committed to working with the poorest, because that is our particular mandate. Thank you.
Anglican Education, thank you. Education Board of Management.
Thank you, Chair. The Anglican Education Board of Management truly appreciates this invitation to this forum and looking at our schools, especially during this COVID time. We know that COVID-19 has revealed so many inequalities and inequities in our education system. So we can all now work together to improve our schools, and our greatest wish is that curriculum be extended to provide opportunities for children's involvement and recognition of performance at non-academic curriculum areas. As I remarked in my opening sentences, not every child is academically inclined. We have to provide the opportunity so that every child will be able to fit into this. I thank you.
Thank you. Private Primary School Principal Association. They never got back in. See why we have to continue the session. Association of Administrators of Public Special Schools of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to emphasize that I'm hoping that the necessary structures, is put in place to ensure that our children with disabilities get a fair chance, right, and not be discriminated against based on the convention for the United Nations Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability. I'm quite certain that many of you are not aware that I'm blind, right? And I want to see my students, all our students with special needs, be able to function, or given the opportunity to function on par with their peers, quote unquote, normal children, right? They must be given that opportunity, and the structures that are required must be put in place to ensure that they get that opportunity to function, sit side by side with everyone else, side by side with their colleagues in school, and get that equal opportunity. So the services that are required for them to perform, well, I would have given you my submission. You would have seen quite a number of things there that we really do need to explain even further, so that all our students, not some, not those that we consider as doesn't have a disability, all of them have an equal opportunity, equal and equitable chance to succeed and function in this society. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, wondering if you left anything for the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago to say.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was about to say that. On behalf of the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago, we would like to say a heartfelt thanks for being invited to this forum. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that we are looking forward to collaborative efforts and to openly and publicly thank our Honorable Minister of Education and the CEO of the Ministry of Education for not only hearing us, but listening to us. Thank you.
And last but not least, Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tutor is appreciative of the ability to submit written and oral material to the JSC. We look forward to the establishment of an interministerial interagency task force that will interact with all stakeholders, that will be guided by robust research and on qualitative and quantitative data to arrive at meaningful solutions to the different areas in Port-of-Spain and environs to help our students in those schools. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, also the members of this committee. Before I leave, I would like to make sure that of reminding you that all of you should go back and read very carefully the Convention on the Rights of the Child and become fully conversant with it. I would also like, especially those who are dealing with special needs children, to look at what the Committee on the Rights of the Child, what they said about Trinidad and Tobago's report, how we deal with children with special needs. This is something that you can understand that is right up your alley. See what they've said. And I believe very much, as I said before, in continuing education, I would like to refer you to 2 books, Hacking School Discipline, 9 Ways to Create a Culture of Empathy and Responsibility Using Restorative Justice by Nathan Maynard and Brad Weinstein. I think I got it from Amazon. You can, order it online. I want you also to read James Gabarino's book. I tried to get him to come to Trinidad in 2000. Maybe someday I'll get him to come here. It's called Raising Children in a Socially Toxic Environment. Raising Children in a Socially Toxic Environment is an excellent book by James Garbarino, Garbarino. And read also The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. So those of you who are interested in what's happening with children who go to school in the inner cities, and how this problem has been analyzed, read those books and read the United Nations documents. I was very surprised in doing a session with training of teachers and principals that they could not tell me the articles in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. They can only give me about 2. All right? So you ought to make yourself aware, be fully conversant. That's your Bible when you're dealing with children. And I would like to thank all of you for your very important contributions here today, both representatives of the various entities and the members. It has been an invaluable exercise, but it's only the beginning of a conversation. Whatever matters are outstanding, pressing that you wish to refer to us, please feel free to do so. Send it on. You have the Parliament's address. And also, if there's anything you're not clear on, that any of the books you didn't get the titles or anything that you require, feel free to contact the Secretariat. I will certainly respond to any concerns, any questions that you have. And I hope the school supervisor will continue visiting the schools and the principals. I went into a classroom to check on a child. I was doing a matter. And when I saw what was happening in the classroom, I couldn't even pass between the rows, and the lighting was so poor. I had to ask the teacher, Miss, how could you be teaching children with this kind of lighting? You're damaging their eyes. Yes, we have to get new light. That is totally unacceptable in a school in Port-of-Spain, right near to my office. I walked to attend to my client's business, and I had to talk to the teacher and the principal. Bad lighting. So some of the things are so very easy to fix, and we don't think about fixing them. If we care about children, we'll do what we can. It's not just lip service. These children, that's our future. And if we want to have a better world, if we give children all the rights that they're entitled to in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's not just for children, we'll be creating a better world, a better Trinidad and Tobago, and ultimately a better world. So I thank you very much. So we need to give the parliamentarians some time to go off and have their lunch before they go to do the people's business to make a better Trinidad and Tobago when they sit in the parliament. And well, all of us, that's what we try to do. And I commend all of you again for the work that you do for our nation's children, for the next generation. Thank you. God bless you. We love you. We love the work that you do. Love our children.
Okay, bye. Well, take care. Be safe, colleagues. Be safe.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.